Welcome back to Media 7. We're talking gay media with Jay Benny, Douglas Jenkin and Johnny Givens. Now, it's a known scientific fact that all gay men are colourful queens who spend their Saturday nights on K Road. We sent Simon Pound out to do the media research that Nielsen doesn't.
Auckland's K Road, 1 a.m. on a Sunday morning. We're at Gay Bar Family to get a terribly unrepresentative poll on gay media usage. From a bunch of lovely ladies. What gay media do you check out?
The only gay media I look at is Express.
Gay NZ. Express and gaynz.com.
What about television shows?
TV shows really died out now. There used to be like The Outlook.
I've seen an episode of Sparkle on Saturday.
I watched Takatapui. Growing up, I used to watch Queer Nation quite a lot.
Do we need gay TV?
Why not just integrate within mainstream media?
It's like a coming out experience for me, especially growing up in, West Auckland.
I'm a Gisborne girl. Being a country girl, it was my connection to the rest of the gay community in New Zealand. Without it, I think there will be a loss.
So perhaps decisions about funding shows are about more than just formats and time slots. They are a lifeline to many people. A lifeline to fabulousness.
Simon Pound there. Johnny, there was an important point made in there, and that part of the job of a show like Queer Nation is actually is national outreach, isn't it? Because kids in New Plymouth coming to terms with their identity can't just bowl up to family on a Saturday night, can they?
Absolutely. And I think that was one of the original discoveries we made in Queer Nation, the feedback we got in the letters. And it changes us from sort of TV program makers to be actually being advocates. And they're getting the message and getting us on screen. If we're not on screen, we don't exist, was one of the adages. And that we have to see gay people, lesbian people, transgender on screen and tell their stories, and then we feel part of it. And people in New Plymouth, Ashburton, the whole of the South Island, great to get some stuff on the screen, and that's what we did go for, yes.
But isn't an important part of that outreach the fact that we see a variety of gay people? I mean, I'm going to take you to task, Russell, because there you fed into one of the gay stereotypes. We're all drag queens, we're all frocks and mirror balls, and that's what we do. Whereas gay and lesbian people in the cities or in the suburbs or in rural areas are very different. We all lead very different lives. We're very boring, some of us.
And we're not seeing them now.
No.
We're not seeing them on screen now. We're seeing them in dramas, we're seeing them in documentaries of a certain type, but we're not seeing the real stories.
And the real stories can only be told, really, in the gay media, because we're the ones who know our stories. We've lived the stories.
Exactly. And there are people our age who are living comfortably with their partners on the North Shore watching Project Runway with everyone else. Gay media can be quite lurid, especially the advertising. Is there a danger that maybe they don't relate to what gay media presents as?
We have very little gay media, really, and I think it's important that each element of the gay media reflects, over time perhaps, as broad a range of the interests of gay people and lesbian people and so forth as possible. So you are going to see some aspects of our lives that are based purely on sex, and some that are based on family life. And you run a Sex on Sight club, which is, there's really no parallel to that in any other sector of the media, is there? It's quite conventional within the sector you're working in, but... I think, again, that's part of gay culture. We've always had Sex on Sight venues, going back decades, if not hundreds of years. Douglas is more a historian than I am. But I think we have to be honest about who we are. We can't file things away and say, well, this is unacceptable, or we have to be frank. And this, again, is part of the strength of the gay media, that we do debate. We are open about ourselves, flaws and all. It's all there in the gay media. We don't self-censor, and therefore that strengthens our view of who we are, where we're heading, and how we interact with the rest of the community, with the general community.
I don't think mainstream media realises quite how mainstream it actually is. Because if you've got, regular TV channels who always have a female and a male presenter, it's like a wedding cake. And if you're sensitive at all to gender politics or to queer politics, that immediately is not you. And except on wild Sundays and sports shows, you never have presenters of the same sex, because it's just always trying to replicate what the television channel thinks is its audience, which is he, she and kids.
Is there any sign of New Zealand having moved on that, say, the women's magazines will cover Rebecca Singh's civil union, which they did?
Yeah, but I mean, that's just the wedding. I mean, weddings are wedding, and they do...
And that's prurient interest. Oh, look, 2 women having a wedding. Oh,
but they're also doing something that heterosexuals do all the time.
How much of an issue is, as I said in the setup at the beginning of the show, revenue? Because it does seem that we hear a lot about the pink dollar. I don't know about the reality of it, because the gay media depends quite a lot on the AIDS Foundation, on a couple of big club owners, doesn't it?
I don't think there's anyone going to do it for free anymore.
No, we've always been under-resourced financially. That we started out as a voluntary organisation. I think the gay media is taken for granted. Even when there is funding available from government sources, it's still not a lot of funding, and yet people have enormous expectations. We constantly on gaynz.com, and we're largely voluntary. We get people demanding that we do this, and why don't you do this, and why didn't you respond to that? And we say, wait a minute, we have day jobs, and we do this in a couple of hours in the evening. We'll get to it when we can.
That was what was wonderful about TVNZ when they got behind it, and they started to get the gay programs looked at as special interest programs. So it released a pocket of money within the government structure of New Zealand On Air, which were fantastically supportive. And
yet there were no applications in that category.
Absolutely.
What do you make of that?
I'm astonished. I'm angry about that. That there's this money is sitting there, but the networks can't make up their mind what the audience is, what sort of program they want, and who can make it. They haven't called for submissions. They've confused the market over the last 3 years in an appalling way, treating production people appallingly, and so people are going, hey, I just don't want to deal with you. Let's deal with something else. And so they're moving on to other things.
Well, what's the solution there? Because clearly I think we've established even in the course of the show that there's a really important role for that kind of programming.
Absolutely. There's a need, there's a desire to do it, there's an ability to do it. It comes to gatekeepers. It comes to people who make the decisions, the people who are talking one-to-one about what our community needs, and advocates for that, to talk to networks and go, hey, look, we can supply this, this and this. Why don't we just do it?
What would you make given the chance? Would you make a magazine show again?
I think I'd make a mixture programs. Markets move on. You know, we've got personalities, we've got interesting things, but we've got to deal with our stories, and that may be, and there's many formats to do that.
That seemed to be a problem with kiwi fruit. The word seemed to be, it has to be light and fluffy, and you had the anniversary of law reform rolled around. And it was very difficult for that program to actually make a serious item.
I think that was actually probably the best program of that series, that they actually took a serious subject that had historical importance, that reflects on the lives of people even today, and they actually did have a good look at it. But otherwise it was all just performing gays for straight people, which gets back to Johnny's comment about the expectations of who the listeners can be, how much it can be broadened out to try and get more and more people watching it, and the interests of gay people just disappear. And I think it would be the same with any minority. You don't, for instance, get the networks saying to Maori television, this must be reality television and it must be designed with straight white people in mind, and it must appeal to them. They say, no, you must do a program about Maori issues from a Maori perspective, end of story, and then take it from there.
Or you can be on at 11 o'clock at night and have ads for 6 telephone lines between the segments. So, you know, for about 10 years I watched television programs that had a warning in front of them saying it contained offensive material, and it really started to make me worry about myself, because everything that was aimed at me was deemed to be offensive. So, I mean, people need to grow up and actually have stuff in prime time that is aimed at an audience like us.
I'm not particularly worried about time slot nowadays. I used to be. That used to be really important to get on the network and to get a wider audience. So we really wanted 10:30. We really wanted 10:30.
Actually, hold that thought, Johnny, because we're going to a break, and after the break we're going to look at perhaps some of the queer content in mainstream media that you didn't know was there.